Hi everyone, and welcome to Weather or Not. I'm WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg. Weather or Not sponsored by TD Bank, and for this episode, we take Weather or Not on the road. It's a gloomy March day, but it's also maple syrup making season. So with all the gloom, we thought we'd brighten things up and sweeten things up by showing you how to make maple syrup. So Weather or Not has come to Muscoot Farm right here in Katonah, New York. Let's see if the sap is flowing as much as the rainfall is. So let us bring in Jonathon Benjamin, farm director here at Muscoot. Jonathon, thanks so much for being with us this morning. I appreciate it. You know, it's so funny, things look so dormant, but there's a lot going on inside these trees right now. And the syrup making process, you know, while it seems simple, okay, we collect the sap, we evaporate it, we make syrup, it's a delicate process, pretty time consuming, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things that you'll always hear about maple sugaring is it takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. So that's a tall order. And as you know, weather has everything to do with this process here. So this is the only time of year that you're going to be getting the sap flow that you need for maple sugaring. So we need those freezing temperatures at night and above freezing temperatures during the day, and that's really how we get the magic to start is right here at this tree.
So it actually probably has gotten more challenging for you with the weather patterns. I mean, we were here with a family in February. Things are pretty prime then, and you think you have a nice window into March, but has it actually been more of a struggle with not as many sub-freezing nights and these spike in temperatures in the 60s? How's that hurt things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, a lot of people talk about the cost of maple sugar and maple syrup, and it is expensive because there's a lot of time into it, but it's also expensive because the timeline in which you're making that is very short. It's about a 6 to 8 week window during a good year. You know, places like Maine, Vermont, the more north you go, it can be a little more extended, but for here, because of those temperatures like you're talking about, it has kind of lessened over time. So
I feel like wine, should a vintage be put on the maple syrup?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the more that the weather changes, the more difficult it'll be for us to get it. So you may start to see those shortages, and or, you know, the price may just keep going up. So what you're getting is a lot of, you know, the snow melt, the rain like you're seeing today. What happens is all that's going into the ground, into those roots. Okay. So that sap is getting actually sucked up the tree due to a vacuum, a natural vacuum. When you get that freeze-thaw, it actually will suck up that sap. So that's why it's very important to get that freeze-thaw. If not, you can kind of stunt that whole process.
And just to clarify, so the sap is just all the water, all the nutrients that are in the ground, and that's what's vacuumed into the tree. Okay.
Yeah, and it's I call it like the lifeblood. I tell people to, you know, like you and I, we can go and donate blood, and a tree can donate sap. You just don't ever want to take too much out of the tree, just like we can only give so much. So.
Okay, so let's rewind now with the process. And this time of year, you know, I think I have a good feel for what type of trees I'm looking at, but it all starts out with tree identification because we want to start out with the right maple. So you were telling me, I mean, in addition, and we'll get to the bark, is that I'm going to go and look at these branches.
Yes, so what's really cool about maple trees in general, and specifically sugar maple trees like the one we have behind us, is they have this really cool thing called opposite branching. So when you see a branch come off, you're going to see one opposite of that.
Gotcha.
And there's only about four types of trees around that have that opposite branching: maple, ash, dogwood, and horse chestnut. So if you find this, you're in the right neighborhood. So that's a good way to identify it in the winter, as well as, you know, the bark is pretty recognizable. It's not shaggy like a, you know, like a birch or anything like that. It's got that dark color. It's got really old, kind of like crinkly looking skin almost, or bark. So those are really the two ways, but this is one that really helps us out. And another that you can just look at nature. There's a bird that's actually called a sapsucker. Yeah. And this time of year, they're doing the same thing we are. They're poking holes into the tree bark. So if you go out to a tree and you see a bunch of those little holes, there's also a pretty good chance that you've got a maple in your yard.
All right, let's make our way over the tree here and look at the whole setup with sap. So again, just looking at, this is the type of bark I'm looking for here, some of the grays. And...
Yep, and it's a lot thicker. It's not that small, you know, papery looking bark. It looks like it's seen some things.
Okay.
It's this old sort of situation. So let's say we identified this tree.
Yes.
We know that we don't want to tap a tree that's really young.
Okay.
So we've always been taught never tap a tree who your bucket is bigger than the diameter of your bucket.
Okay,
so
that's a good rule.
this one's probably around, you know, 80 to 100 years old, probably this tree. And so we know that we can tap it and do it without really hurting that tree. So what we're doing right now is we're looking at one of these buckets. So this is just a regular sap bucket. It's a you know, metal. And you can see in here that we actually have some sap. Basically what we did is we came out here and we took one of these, which is called a spile or a spout, and this is about a 7/16 inch hole that we go in. And
you're just drilling it?
Yeah, you just drill, and you can use at home, you can use a portable like drill, you can use a hand drill, which is what we use to kind of keep it a little more authentic. A 7/16 inch bit, and you only go in about 2.5 inches. You don't have to go very far. And the reason that you go in that far is that you're going through this bark, and you're going through a layer next called the cambium, which is a thin layer between the bark and the tree. And what we're trying to get into, believe it or not, it's called the sapwood. So once we get into that sapwood, you're going to start to see that sap come out. Around here you see tubing, you see all kinds of things, but the bucket is kind of more of an old kind of way that it was done, like when this was a working farm back in the 1800s. So.
Last question before we go to the sugar shack, because I'm anxious to get there.
Sure.
It smells so good. I wish that whether or not we're scratch and sniff, because it's so great. But better to do metal buckets versus some of the plastic buckets I've seen?
I think it's just it's a preference. So a long time ago, the old timers, when they switched to plastic, they're, it'll never taste the same or whatever. And then when they went from plastic buckets to plastic tubing, the same sort of thing. So it's a preference. We like to keep kind of the same vintage of a historic farm, so that's why we use the metal buckets. But yeah, if you go to places that are really trying to do it for profit, they probably have moved on to the tubing at this point. But yeah, if you do it backyard, metal or plastic, it really makes no difference. So.
All right, so we've collected our sap. It's time to head over to the sugar shack. Jonathan, you ready to go?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go make some syrup. Chickens are happy too. I can see it venting already. It's gonna be toasty inside there. This is where the magic happens. Jonathan, we got our sap bucket. What happens next?
So usually what we do, we take our sap right from our trees, and we're gonna put it into some sort of food safe container. So you can see this is a lot of sap that we currently have. So we're just gonna pour this right into that, and then this is what we're gonna use to eventually get our maple syrup. So we would take our sap, and then what we're gonna do is take that sap and directly put it into this machine here. So we take this, we get this really, really hot. It's a wood-fired evaporator, and this is called the evaporator pan. And we need to take that sap and we put it right directly into this pan. The magic number that we're looking for is 219 degrees.
So 7 degrees above boiling.
Yes, so right now we know that we're boiling because we can see it. And it takes, again, that 40-to-1 ratio. So we're trying to boil 40 gallons of sap to get 40 gallons of water, basically, or 39 gallons of water off, and what we'll be left with is that 1 gallon of maple syrup. So
this is a full day to make this gallon.
Yeah, on a day like today, it's not bad because it's a little chilly out, and so this can be a nice place to be.
Do you notice, like, maybe at the beginning of the day, like, this could be one of the better batches of the day? Can you taste the difference in daily batches?
So the big thing about maple syrup that everybody wants to know is like the different colors of maple syrup.
Right.
So typically there's a lighter one and a medium one and then a dark one. And so that all comes about at the time of the season in which you're boiling your sap.
Oh, all right.
If I'm looking at this now, I can see that it's starting to darken up a little bit.
Okay.
So this is going to be, since we're kind of close to the end of the season, that really deep, rich maple flavor.
Some home tips. Probably not going to do it inside a kitchen, right?
Sure.
You want to kind of make an evaporator of some kind outside. Right?
Yeah. So you can do like a fire pit at home.
Okay.
And then just, have one of those tripods that you would put a pot over. You mentioned propane earlier, so if anybody tries to do the deep frying of a turkey around Thanksgiving, you could use that pot on like a propane stove and do the same thing. As long as you don't have wallpaper inside, you could definitely try it inside. As a matter of fact, sometimes we try to finish the product inside, because once it gets close to that 219 degrees, we need to be watching it like a hawk, because if you go beyond that 219 degrees, you run the risk of making maple sugar, because you're taking even more moisture out of it, or you're running the risk of burning the pan. If anybody's ever tried to make candy at home, you know how much you have to make sure. So yeah, you could do it outside, you can do it inside. You just have to have a heating source, a pan and your sap. So
obviously, Vermont maple syrup, they get the top billing every year. But is that just because the commonality of the maple tree up there, the extended season, or would you put your Katonah syrup up against any Vermont maple syrup?
I mean, absolutely, just because, I'm very proud New Yorker now. But yeah, honestly, Vermont has the same it has all the right things that you're looking for. The weather, all the trees, the more south you go, the less maple trees that you're going to see, just because they don't really love that climate. But yeah, I think that New York has, just like on pretty much anything else, has the right to throw their hat into the ring, for sure.
All right, well, I think maybe that was time to taste.
All right.
Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it. All right, it's taste test time. So we got a half a pint of this precious syrup that takes all day to make. Would this be the richer color you were referring to?
Yeah, so if you see, it is a little bit darker than most, and this is from just about a week or so ago.
Oh, that looks good. Smells good too.
Okay. All right.
All right, cheers to a good syrup season.
Oh wow, that's really tasty.
Yeah, and that's why we do it. That right there.
I feel like there's a signature Muscoot taste in there. It's really good. Yeah. I know I'm going to try it in the backyard. I got a walnut tree and maple trees back there, so that's going to be fun to give it a shot.
Well, give us a call if you have any questions, and we're happy to help. So we're open 362 days a year to the public. So during that time, we have a lot of programs, morning farm chores. You can come and help us take care of the animals. We run a summer camp here at the farm. May through November, we do our very own farmers market on Sundays here at the farm. We run a lot of programs for kids too. So we have some called Little Explorers, where you can come and kids get to learn about that. We have over 100 animals here at the farm. As you can hear, we have
got personality.
Oh, absolutely. We have about 7 miles of hiking trails here at the farm as well. So it's not just sugaring or animals. There's a lot of nature to explore too. So.
Well, I will tell you, I want to mention that you have the fluffy Highland cows. My daughter, in love with those cows, literally saw the cows and came over and started welling up just because it made her so happy. So it is a great place, and we thank you so much for hosting us today, making some syrup, and we'll be back during the season and brightening our personalities up on a gloomy day. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, that's this edition of Whether or Not from Muscoot Farm here in Katonah, New York, Westchester County. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, rain or shine.